Good evening. Today I'm going to be reading the King James Version of the Bible, and I'm going to start with John chapter 10 and basically do this to show how a seminary professor is teaching Greek students to read the Greek and how basically silly it actually looks if you think about it in comparison to English. So let me give you an example. We're going to be parsing and discussing the grammar of this section instead of just reading it aloud. So John chapter 10 starts with, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber." And so starting off, we got the word verily. And so the question is this a verb? Is this a noun? Is this an adjective? What exactly is this? Verily, it would come from the Latin word veritas. It's going to talk about truthfulness, honesty. We're going to say this is an adverb, verily, and then it's repeated twice. And so what does this mean that it's repeated twice? It would be used for emphasis. I say. Okay, so if it says I say, what's the person number? And that would be first person singular, present, active, indicative. I say versus, you say or he says. This is the first person singular, present, active, indicative. Unto you. And so unto you, what is the you? Is that the subject, direct object, indirect object? And in this case, unto you is the indirect object. And is it singular or plural? It is plural. He that entereth. So now we have a he. That would be a pronoun, third person singular. And it's he that entereth. So this is the participle. And it was translated into English, of course, as he that entereth, where we usually would say he who enters. In King James English, it's he that entereth. And the entereth is a verb that is third person singular, present, active, indicative. And it's using this third person singular, present, active, indicative as a describing participle modifying the word he. So it's not that he entereth, but it's he that entereth doeth something else. So we're describing what exactly that he is. It's he that entereth not by the door, but climbeth up some other way. This is going to be your he. Okay, we're not saying he climbeth up because that would be a sentence. We're saying he that climbeth, so making this all part of the structure of some type of an independent participle. Now, when it says climbeth not by the door is that, the subject of the sentence, the direct object of the sentence. What is the door being used as? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? And so I could say it's definitely a noun, and it's used with the preposition by. Into the sheepfold, well, we definitely got into plus the sheepfold. And so this is, again, a preposition with the noun sheepfold. But then climbeth up some other way. So again, we have climbeth, which is referring back to the he that. So we're not saying he climbeth, but we're saying he that climbeth. And so we're still describing a noun using a verb to describe the noun as though it's a participle. And we're not using a verb saying he climbeth, but we're describing the noun as the he that climbeth. Now it's he that climbeth another way, some other way. And so the word way is, of course, singular. Some other way is describing maybe that it's not a certain other way, like a specific other way, but some other way could be any other way. And then the same is a thief and a robber. So the first thing we have is the same. That would be going back to the subject of the sentence he, and the is third person singular, present, active, indicative of the verb to be. And so we're just declining it into third person singular is. And then a thief, we're using the indirect article a alongside the word thief. And since it is the same is a thief, we have both a nominative and predicate nominative. And so the same would be your nominative subject, and the predicate nominative would be a thief. and a robber. And so now we have and linking the thief and the robber together. And we both have the indirect a with thief and the word a indirect article used with the word robber. And then the question is a thief and a robber different, or is it the same? And so we could say, we could try to make it out that the thief and the robber are the same, or try to make these distinct and say there's some type of minute difference between a thief and a robber. That's the end of verse 1. And so let me do a slight comment on that first verse and just say thank you for watching. The point of dragging that out to the extent that I did is to show that if you are unaware of English grammar, that type of meticulousness may be interesting to understand a single verse in the King James Bible. But at the same time, imagine if I were to try to read the entire King James Bible this way. It would be very difficult to follow, and it would also become very boring because, okay, after I know that, I say as a first person singular present active indicative, do I need to say first person singular present active indicative every time I say I say? I could skip a little bit to where let's go to verse 15, where it says, as the Father knoweth me. And so the question then is knoweth. What is your verb? It's knoweth. This is the third person singular present active indicative, knoweth. And for most people reading that in English, it doesn't matter to the extent of having to conjure up in your imagination third person singular present active indicative every time you see heareth, doeth, saith. Okay, every time we see saith, as in thus saith the Lord, do I have to say in English, oh my goodness, this is a third person singular present active indicative, saith. Oh my goodness, it's the it's the present active indicative in the third person singular of this word to say. Okay, it would seem rather ludicrous to go to that extent. Now, I'm not saying that there couldn't be a purpose in going to that extent upon occasion to explain certain of the grammar in the King James Bible. But what my point is that we don't do this in English, where we talk about the grammar of every single verse in the King James Bible. And for some reason, seminary professors have this idea that to, quote unquote, read the New Testament in Greek, or even to, quote unquote, read Plato or read Aristotle, you have to discuss the grammar and understand all the grammar to everything you read in order to read it properly. And that's just simply not true. This is not a historical way that Greek has always been read. Of course, there have been class demonstrations where it was important for students to say, present active indicative third person singular during grammatical lessons in the Roman Empire. But to actually sit down and read a book, the point and the goal of anybody that's studying Greek and or Latin or Hebrew or whatever is that you should be able to get to the point where you can read without the necessity of understanding the grammar side by side. And so that is my take on why this is so ridiculous. And if you'll see me on my platform, I'm going to be reading church fathers and reading classical texts in Greek and some stuff in Latin without discussing the grammar. And you might say, well, maybe, Nathaniel doesn't understand the grammar of this passage. And that might be true. I might not understand the grammar. But the point is, I'm reading it, and that's something that needs to be done. And if there's something that's grammatically interesting, I can always zoom in and look things up. I have a collection of mini dictionaries from the 1800s to 1700s, dictionaries in Latin to Greek, or Greek to Latin, German to Greek, and also English to Greek. And they're very interesting. And I love to learn Greek grammar, but that needs to be done alongside actually reading it. And so that's what I'm doing on this channel, is actually reading Greek. Thank you, and I'll see you later.